Well, Irish fans, interesting game for us to talk about. In this one, Notre Dame loses to Stanford 16-14 at home. This is the voice of college football. We're here to talk about that. So I'm your host, Ben Belden. You can see my Twitter information right there on the screen. I'm going to ramble and do some particulars here at the beginning as we wait for people to kind of get into this live setting for us. We are live on the Voice of College Football, and we are live on the Notre Dame only channel at the Voice of College Football. That's MarkRogersTV. Again, I'm Ben Belden. If you're new here, follow me on Twitter. Like I say, that's on the screen at RealBBelden. And like I say, Notre Dame loses to Stanford in embarrassing fashion is really about the best way to put it. A bad Stanford team. A bad Notre Dame performance. I think it was very obvious that Notre Dame had the better football players on Saturday night. Did not have the better product on the field, clearly, as there were many ways and areas that Notre Dame was just simply outplayed. When the few things went right for Notre Dame, it was very obvious that, like I say, Notre Dame, better players, better talent, more talent, and somewhere along the line that ended up not mattering, and thus a very embarrassing loss at the hands of, like I say, a bad Stanford team. So we're going to digest all of that. Like I say, welcome in now that we've got a few people in here. The Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers TV. I am your host, Ben Belden. As I always tell people on these, I often take comments and conversations from Twitter and bring them over to this show and vice versa. Take comments from this show, take them over to Twitter, joining the conversation at RealBBelden. And we can talk Notre Dame football, whether you're here to commiserate with me, whether you're here to make fun of me, that's fine. I'm here for all of it. So as we go along today, if you're joining us here, make sure that you put your comments in the chat. I welcome those, good, bad, or indifferent, and can handle the ones where Notre Dame's the butt of the joke as well. I promise. So also, last thing, real quickly, if you are if you are watching this channel on the Voice of College Football channel, make sure you're also going over to the Notre Dame specific Voice of College Football channel and make sure that you are subscribing over there as well. We often do post-game shows and things over on the Notre Dame channel, so having that subscription will make sure that you never miss out on anything. I'll go ahead and I'll even just kind of drop that here in the chat. If you are on the Voice of College Football channel, like I say, make sure that you are also over at the Notre Dame specific page so that you know when we're going live and that you can join in the conversation that we do after games most often as well. So about 90% of the time, Notre Dame game is over within a half hour or so. I like to get on that specific channel. Oftentimes the Voice of College Football channel is just kind of tied up by a lot of other bigger games because let's face it, Notre Dame is not a big game this year, and so if you're into that Notre Dame channel, you'll know when we go live. Again, whether you're a Notre Dame fan or not, if you want to come over there and just dog on me, then absolutely come on over and just dog on me. So I like the interaction regardless if it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever. So let's dive into it. Okay. First of all, I mentioned oftentimes that I am the post-game host. I do a post-game show for Notre Dame on that Notre Dame channel. And the reason we didn't do that this week is because I was in South Bend. No way to quickly get to a computer and a microphone and a camera to record a post-game show. So here we are Sunday night. It's about 7:51 as I record this right now, Eastern time. We're going to go on up to, about the time that Sunday night football is going on here. So about another half hour or so, talk Notre Dame, Stanford and do that. But I don't know. There's a million places, I guess, where I could start in this particular one. And I don't know. I don't even know that I want to stop or start in this particular spot, but I'm going to do it anyway. um, there's golly, Notre Dame gets no calls. Has anyone? I mean, this is a thing that I have been on for quite a while, and like you hate to even put it that way, because Notre Dame should have won this game going away. There should have been no amount of officiating or poor calls or questionable Pac-12 officials that had anything to do with the outcome of this game. And I get that. I'm not saying like the officials went out here and absolutely lost Notre Dame the game. But goodness gracious, like as I sit here and I think about it, like Stanford not called for a holding penalty all night. And you only have to go about 2 plays into the game where, one of the Adamalola twins was just blatantly held and tackled in the middle of the line to see that, refs weren't going to call holding on Stanford the whole game. Michael Mayer got called for 2 holding penalties, neither of them holding penalties. I believe it was, end of the third quarter, perhaps it was, where J.D. Bertrand gets to Tanner McKee, knocks the ball out, punches the ball out. It's ruled a fumble on the field. After a lengthy review, somehow they decide that there's indisputable video evidence that McKee's knee was down. Absolutely not indisputable. And by the way, I don't even think it was down. So if I can sit here and say I, in good conscience, don't think that McKee's knee was down, how they're able to undisputably tell me that it was down, I have absolutely no clue. Late hit on Drew Pine wasn't called. Defensive holding on Chris Smith on a 3rd and 7 in the last 5 or 6 minutes of the game there was questionable at best. On that particular play, that defensive holding play was offset by an illegal formation by Stanford on a play where there was an incomplete pass on 3rd and 7 anyways. At worst, Notre Dame declines that penalty. Stanford punts it with 5 or 6 minutes left there. Notre Dame gets the ball back quicker. Things are a little bit different there at the end as it was. They get to replay that down. Stanford hits on 3rd and 7 on a kind of a back shoulder type of a play where the receiver just made a pretty unbelievable catch. They run off 4 more minutes of clock. Notre Dame gets it back with 2 minutes left, and we know the rest. So I don't know, man. Like I'm sure Stanford and their fans have some gripes with the officiating from last night as well. But from a Notre Dame fan lens, it's real easy to just think of all of these instances where, Notre Dame just needed one break, one call to go their way. Maybe there was a defensive pass interference on Stanford that you could have argued debatable. But at home, with Pac-12 officials, just never seems like Notre Dame gets that call. They don't get the calls. There's holding all over the field. And you cannot tell me that all night Stanford didn't hold Notre Dame one single time. You can't do it. So I don't know what that means. And I don't have a particular, point in saying all this other than it's just a general frustration of mine. As U221 says, Notre Dame was 17-point favorites. Quit making excuses. That's a very good point. But again, like I say, and here's another one that kind of goes with that, but I don't mind this comment either. You make your own breaks, Vince Lombardi. Totally get that. I mean, I understand, but when you're put into a position and you have a linebacker go and punch the ball out and it's a fumble and it's called a fumble on the field, and then you can't say for absolutely sure that a knee's down. I don't know how you make your own breaks any better than that, I guess. And again, I understand Notre Dame was the better talented team. There's too much talent on this team for them to lose to Stanford. I get it. Okay. The officials should have just been able to go out there in Cardinal red and just called the game for Stanford, and Notre Dame still should have had enough talent to win. I get that. But it's frustrating. It's frustrating as a Notre Dame fan. It's frustrating to watch. Couple comments I'll get to here first because these comments about the officiating I didn't really mean to make a whole segment about. Here's one from Tom Reed. ND ain't been worth anything since they covered their cross, so Obama came to speak there. Interesting take. I'll just leave that one alone. Brooks Durham says, make touchdown Jesus more visible from the bleachers again. Don't really know that you can go and take part of the stadium away, but okay. Couple people saying ND cost me money. This person says worst offense in the FBS. Worst is a strong word, but certainly it's bad. Brooks Durham again says, how is Reese still employed? Oregon destroyed Stanford. I'm going to talk about coaching and how much of this falls on the coaching staff here soon. I'll touch on that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The offense is so predictable, throw to Mayer and nothing else. Another thing that I'm going to touch on. This is another one. All over the country, mediocre offenses are scoring 40 a night. I'm so sick of us not being able to. Tend to agree. And like I say, we're going to get into talking about the offenses. I just want to take a second there to get to some of those comments. So I don't know. So moving on just a little bit then. I talked about how, man, like I say, I hate talking about officiating. I don't know that I've ever really talked about officiating on this show before, but it felt somewhat appropriate to do so. The question then that I kind of want to get into that's along the same lines is the question that a lot of people are going to ask and are continuing to ask because of, this 3-3 start in the Marcus Freeman era. And, you might ask about the officiating. Well, we don't know what's going on along the sidelines there. Is Marcus Freeman, Marcus Freeman, first of all, let's say this, is not Brian Kelly, okay? Marcus Freeman is a different dude than Brian Kelly. He's not going to lose his mind outwardly the way that Brian Kelly, red-faced and angry, lost his mind. And I think that's by design. I've seen people calling for and suggesting that what Freeman needs to do is that part of the reason that Freeman is struggling as a first-year coach, or I guess this is another bullet point in here's how I know Freeman is struggling as a first-year head coach, is that he's not working the officials. He's not losing his mind. You gain a little bit of respect once in a while. I hear those arguments. I do. The other thing, the flip side of the coin, I guess, that I will say to that is that certainly, certainly Marcus Freeman by design is not going to do the same things Brian Kelly did. Because guess what? When Brian Kelly lost his mind on the sidelines, his team and, the members of the team took their cue from Brian Kelly. And if Brian Kelly has lost his mind, the team's going to lose their mind and they're going to be all out of sorts. And when you're the adult on the sideline, when you're the guy that, when you're the guy that the players are looking up to, you have to behave a certain way. And I have no doubt whatsoever that there have been times where Freeman wanted to just probably go out there and lose it, questioning a call, but takes the attitude very deliberately, like, I can't lose my mind right now because it's not going to do anything and it's not going to help my team. And so, for those calling for Freeman to start losing his mind like that, and there's been just a couple on Twitter, I guess, and like I say, I read tweets, and I don't mean to say that there's a lot of people saying this, but there's a few. And thus, I don't know. I just don't know that that's the answer here. But to the question then that everybody else is asking is, maybe not everybody, but there's also the suggestion that is Marcus Freeman as a head coach in general, whether you're talking about working the officials, whether you're talking about game management, whether you're talking about getting his team ready to play, whether you're talking about preparation and practice the week leading up to a game, when it's talking about scouting or whatever, what have you, is Marcus Freeman in over his head as Notre Dame's head coach. And if you're in there in the chat listening and you want to kind of answer that question, certainly, I guess you can give your opinion. I might put a few of them up on the screen. I see I have a few comments to catch up on as we go along here, but I'm going to give my answer as well. I have a tough time saying that that Freeman is in over his head. That's a very strong way, very extreme way of saying it, in my opinion. In over his head would make it sound like he has no clue what he's doing. And I don't know how you can look at what Notre Dame does, or at least what they try to do, and say Notre Dame's coaching staff has no clue what they're doing. I don't think that's what we're seeing from Notre Dame, from Tommy Rees, from Al Golden, from any of it. They know what they're doing. Okay, anybody that's played at a high level, and Marcus Freeman played at Ohio State. He's coached all over, Ohio State, Purdue, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. The way he's worked his way on up the ranks, he's been in enough places under enough good coaches, coached with enough good people, to know what he's doing, to have good ideas. He's surrounded himself with other guys that know what they're doing. Tommy Rees, Al Golden are good football minds. They're good football minds. So to say that they don't know what they're doing is not accurate in my particular opinion. But I don't know. On the other side, the flip side of that coin then is that why then, if Notre Dame has these good coaches, are they struggling so badly? So what I will say, I guess, is, if we're talking about a first-year head coach, if we're talking about a guy who is the head guy for the first time, are we seeing some growing pains as a result of those things? Yeah, I think so. I think so. But here's how I look at it. Okay. Brian Kelly, towards the end of his tenure at Notre Dame, had coached for, I don't know, somebody look it up for me, 30 some years. Okay. When you put all of his stops together, Grand Valley State, Central Michigan, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, now into LSU, had coached for 30 some years. Okay. And is what we're seeing from Notre Dame all that different from what we saw out of Brian Kelly coached teams? Is it that different? Is it that? Because I contend that it's not. Would a Brian Kelly coached team maybe be about 5-1 right now? Probably. Okay. But Brian Kelly is has 20 plus years of tenure under his belt, and still was having the same issues against bad teams that Marcus Freeman was showing in this showing at the beginning of his career. Brian Kelly's team dodged bullets. They didn't go out and dominate people. They didn't go out and just blow the brakes off of people. Yeah, did they once in a while play really, really horrendous teams and blow them out? Yeah, sure. Over the course of, a lot of games, did Notre Dame have a few blowouts? Yeah, okay, I get that. Marcus Freeman's coached for 6 games, 7 if you count the bowl. And all Marcus Freeman's teams aren't doing right now is that way that somehow Brian Kelly, always found a way to, even in the worst of games, and you can pick any, so many games, Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh, games against teams where Notre Dame should win going away, don't win going away, and end up having to, put the game away on the last drive, or score late and then have to have a defensive stop or whatever. The only difference right now is that in 2 different times this year, Marcus Freeman's teams haven't necessarily been able to avoid a disaster, whereas Brian Kelly's teams at times narrowly avoided disaster. That to me is the only difference. And you're talking about a Brian Kelly coach team. Brian Kelly coached teams that had, Brian Kelly was a 30-year head coach, and Marcus Freeman is barely been alive as long as Brian Kelly has head coaching experience. I mean, I'm exaggerating slightly, but do I make sense here? I mean, how can we, I would contend, if you watch the same game that I watch, okay, what I see is that Notre Dame actually has some good stuff once in a while. Here's an example. Okay. Twice in the first quarter last night, even in one of the worst games that we've seen Notre Dame play in terms of, the opponent, the quality of the opponent, getting shut out in the first half, whatever. Things terrible. Okay. But in the first quarter on back-to-back plays, Notre Dame should have scored touchdowns. Okay. There's the play to Michael Mayer where it sounds like, and I haven't gone back and watched the game twice. I've seen this kind of broken down on Twitter. I even asked for people to give their explanations on Twitter, because watching it live in the stadium, you don't necessarily, unless you're a referee, and that's the thing that you look at often. Excuse me. You don't necessarily catch that, that Mitchell Evans is not supposed to be on the line of scrimmage in that particular player, that Notre Dame had lined up wrong. That's not something that the average person sees. But regardless, that's a snafu. It's a game of inches type of a snafu that ended up taking points off the board for Notre Dame. Is that Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees's fault that Mitchell Evans didn't line up the right way and it cost Notre Dame points? There's an argument to be made. Absolutely. But it's not like those guys told Mitchell Evans, hey, you got to line up this way. They didn't teach him the wrong way to do it. Do we think that? Because if you're going to make the argument that Marcus Freeman, Tommy Rees, on down the line don't know what they're doing, that's what you're insinuating. I don't think that's the case. For Notre Dame. And so there's that play. The play exactly after it, okay, is a play where Braden Lindsay runs kind of a deep, skinny type post to the middle of the field, okay? Should have been a touchdown, wide open. Drew Pine airmails it out the back of the end zone, doesn't even throw it in the same area code as Braden Lindsay. Doesn't throw it in the same vicinity. The best receiver in the world wouldn't have caught that pass. And the reason I say it that way is because I've been very, very critical of Braden Lindsay. I've said that Braden Lindsay is a guy that if Braden Lindsay was playing really good, Notre Dame would be playing really good. And I very much believe this. But, I'm critical of Braden Lindsay because he's a fifth-year senior, and I just don't see the production out of him. But then you watch him get wide open and should have just, should have had a touchdown, but the quarterback isn't there. The quarterbacking isn't there, I guess is how I should say that. The quarterback doesn't put it on the money so that Braden Lindsay can score right there. And that's two plays in the first quarter, back-to-back plays where Tommy Rees dialed up plays that was going to get Notre Dame a score. Back-to-back plays. And Notre Dame's players didn't execute the way that they should have. Now, there's also an argument to be made here that, obviously I'm making the argument in that vein that it's an execution error over a coaching error. It's not like Marcus Freeman and Tommy Rees taught them wrong. It's not like they taught them, hey, when you got a receiver open, airmail it out the back of the end zone. That's obviously not what they say at practice, okay? However, when you're a coach, the flip side of that coin then becomes you get simply what you tolerate, okay? And if you tolerate Drew Pine missing receivers, if you tolerate Mitchell Evans, who was playing in his first game all year, lining up the wrong ways to the point where it costs you points, if you tolerate that and you let it keep happening and there's no ramifications for it, then that's coaching error and that's coaching malpractice. And so is that happening? I have no idea. I have no idea what the accountability is like for Notre Dame for those things. However, I do know that I've watched Drew Pine miss opportunities. I watched him miss opportunities against BYU. If you watched my show last week, I talked ad nauseum about missed opportunities, about how, his first two dropbacks of the game, both of them should have had an open receiver. One of them should have been a touchdown. But because he had a little pressure in his face, he missed. And one of them, he scrambled and had Jaden Thomas wide open in the middle of the field which led to a punt, which led to BYU points, so on and so forth. Okay. I've watched Drew Pine miss enough that I sit and think, not it. Not it. And that's another point, as I kind of check my notes here that I have to talk about going forward. But so I don't know. I don't know about that accountability piece. It's hard to say. It's hard to say because here's the other thing. What we don't know about this quarterback situation that I'm going to touch on here in a hot second is, well, obviously we see how Drew Pine messes up because we get to watch it on Saturdays. We get to pick it apart after Saturdays. We see it. It's out there for everyone to see. We don't see the ways that right now everybody's calling for Steve Angeli to be the quarterback who's currently the backup, obviously. We don't see the way that he messes up, okay? Because if he never messed up, he would be the starter at this point, I would think. And if that's not the case and I'm off, which I'll never know, but if it is a situation where, Steve Angeli is actually perfect in practice and, then whatever, okay? Then that's bad. That's bad. But I don't think that's the case. So I don't know, guys. I don't know. This whole notion of, Marcus Freeman doesn't have this team ready to play, to me, to kind of summarize this point here, is just bogus. It doesn't make sense. What's he supposed to do? When people say that, like, this is a trite thing that when people on podcasts say this, when people on, on Twitter say this, if I can't ask this all the time, but when people say they weren't ready to play, how do you know? Yeah, do you understand? Like, how do you know what's in those players' minds, their heads? How can you tell that they're unfocused? Is it lack of focus, or is it just not good enough? Is it lack of focus, or, the other team made a play? Is it lack of focus, or, and I think lack of focus and, making mistakes aren't always hand in hand. Yes, certainly, you line up the wrong way, that's lack of focus. But is fumbling a lack of focus? Is fumbling the ball not ready to play? I don't know. I don't know the answers to those particular questions, to be honest with you. I just think it's bogus to say Marcus Freeman doesn't have these guys ready to play. How you can say that at this point when you just went through 12 years of Brian Kelly, I don't know, because Marcus Freeman, it's not Marcus Freeman's fault that he inherited this quarterback room that was left the way that it is, with a guy that had never taken really hardly a meaningful snap outside of a game or two in Tyler Buckner to start the season, and then Drew Pine is the next best option. I mean, I don't know. And again, like I say, I'll have plenty more about Drew Pine here in a second. But I don't know. To me, to come in, to have any type of an argument where you could say Marcus Freeman is not the answer for Notre Dame after what we've seen thus far, I don't know how you could see that, because it's not all that different than it was with Brian Kelly. It's not, okay? Like I say, we went from dodging bullets and avoiding disaster so that we just forget about it for the most part to, well, guess what? A couple bullets landed, okay? And I don't know that the bullets that landed are Marcus Freeman's fault, in my opinion. What I'll say is this: Marcus Freeman's a different guy than Brian Kelly. We sat and we criticized Brian Kelly for throwing players under the bus, for never blaming the right people, for saying the same trite phrases over and over and over and over and over again. And now we have Marcus Freeman, who has at the very, very least established a culture of top-down accountability at the very least, and who is a guy that the players know and the players will play for and the players like. Is there any lack of intensity for Notre Dame? Is there any point where you say, well, these players aren't trying hard, or they're apathetic, or they don't care? No, there absolutely isn't. Okay. In fact, this is a conversation for another day, but dang it, I wish that Notre Dame's crowds would feed off the players a little bit, because The players are trying to get up for third downs. The players are trying to make it loud. The players are trying to have fun. The players are trying to make it a great atmosphere. And all Notre Dame fans do, for the most part, is sit there and scoff at those of us who want to get up and stand on third down and yell and make the place loud and all of that. So there we go. The players play for Marcus Freeman. Marcus Freeman is going to try harder in recruiting than Brian Kelly is. He's going to take a different approach. And it's going to take some time for Brian Kelly to work out growing pains, for him to get a full, for Marcus Freeman to work out growing pains, to get a full Marcus Freeman class. I know he had a lot of hand in, some of these players that are on the defensive side of the football right now, that are, that I know there's 2 years worth of guys that Marcus Freeman has recruited at this point. It's still not a Marcus Freeman team. It's still not, a team that has all the kinks worked out yet. Because I'll be honest, and this is the last I'll say about this. There was a lot made of, how much does Tommy Rees have a leash on him from Brian Kelly? Okay. And then when Marcus Freeman took over, the question was, well, when that leash comes off, what is the offense going to look like? Okay. Has anyone stopped and considered that maybe Brian Kelly saved Tommy Rees from some of the things that we question about Tommy Rees this year? Okay. Is Marcus Freeman going to question those same things? No, he's a different coach than Brian Kelly. He's not an offensive-minded coach, okay? So does Tommy Rees now, as a first-year guy that doesn't have a leash on him, does he need to come into his own as a play caller because it's the first time he doesn't have Brian Kelly looking over his shoulder? Absolutely. Absolutely. So does that have something to do with this? So people want to talk about Marcus Freeman as a first-year head coach. In a lot of ways, isn't Tommy Rees a first-year offensive coordinator in a lot of respects? I know literally he's not. But he's got to figure out who he is as a play caller when he's now the top offensive mind in the room. He's the first offensive mind. He's the end-all, be-all of the offense. For the most part. Do other guys have things to say in it? Does Marcus Freeman certainly have a lot to say in it? Obviously. And so I understand there's a top-down accountability, but Marcus Freeman is delegating more of this offense to Tommy Rees, and Tommy Rees has to come into his own as well. Okay? All right, there's been a lot of comments here. I've seen Urban Meyer coming up. So I'm going to get to a couple of comments here. Man alive. Here's one that I should also probably address. A question from U221. He says, how many players will be in the portal leaving Notre Dame? I don't think players that are going to that are there for Notre Dame right now are going to leave Notre Dame. Unless they're not getting playing time. Like, I don't think you're going to get main contributors that say Notre Dame sucks, I'm going to leave Notre Dame. That's just not usually how it works. The guys that are main contributors and are getting playing time are usually more along the lines of thinking, well, you know what? I'm going to try to stay here and try to be the reason it changes because I'm getting playing time. If it's not good and, they're using me the right way and they're putting me in a position, but I got to do better or my teammates got to do better, then I think you stay. I worry more about, how teams like Michigan and Ohio State are going to try to come for our top guys and poach them. The CJ Carrs of the world, go on down the line. Okay. This isn't a recruiting podcast right now, so I'm not going to talk about it, but I worry about, that's what I worry about. I don't worry about current guys leaving. Okay. Here's another comment about the officiating. You cannot overturn the fumble against Stanford. Can't tell me what we saw on the replay that was indisputable. I agree with that. Here's another comment that I meant to touch on. Rees has to go. Here's another thing. Okay. And this, I think, was made before I went on my rant about Tommy Rees, but obviously he's got to come into his own. I'd be careful of saying that Tommy Rees has to go because you can, again, like I say, does Rees have to come into his own as an offensive coordinator, as the guy who calls the plays? I would say that's fair. I really would. But if Tommy Rees gets canned or he leaves or whatever, you understand that there's offensive guys in the class of 23 and 24, the CJ Carrs, the Jaden Greathouses, the Rico Floreses, go on down the line, okay? Recruited by Tommy Rees that would potentially think about flipping if Tommy Rees were to go. So, it's not everything happens in a vacuum. And something like that is a great, great example for this. Be careful about Tommy. Be careful what you wish for, okay? Because I think Tommy Rees is going to end up being a really good coach. Can we get frustrated with him? Am I frustrated with him? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know. That's about all I got to say about that. To take a page from Forrest Gump. Looking at a couple more. I'm going to address this. I don't agree with this comment. Says, Freeman seems like a nice enough guy, but he was a woke and desperate hire. Was he? Because I think that a lot of people would have liked to inherit what Brian Kelly got, to be honest with you. Were you going to get a top-notch guy, I don't know, a huge name? No, but certainly could you have gotten a guy with head coaching experience? Yes. I mean, you absolutely could have. Would that have been better? I don't know, because the sample size is too small. I don't know how you call him a woke hire. I assume the conversation about him being a woke hire is because you wanted to hire a guy who's an African-American, a young African-American. And I couldn't, that's not why Notre Dame made this hire. That's just, it's not. He was a great recruiter. The players really respected him. Good football mind. And is going to obviously have taken his lumps. But in the end, after a bigger sample size, I don't think you'll have these same conversations about him. I think you're going to talk about him as a great recruiter, a guy that showed resilience and toughness, and that's what you want for these guys right now, and a guy that's going to bring this team forward. I really, really do. Next comment says, can we give Angeli a shot this year? Oh, boy. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, here's a similar comment that Freeman should have made his bones at Cincinnati or some other smaller program. I say these things from time to time, too. Would I have liked Marcus Freeman or even Tommy Rees to have had their first big-time jobs as coordinators or head coaches be at smaller places and then come to Notre Dame? Sure. Okay. Would have allowed probably for them to get some of those kinks worked out and to work out better at Notre Dame? Sure. Do I have a problem that Notre Dame took flyers on guys that have really high upside as assistant coaches? And yes, Tommy Rees still has very high upside as an assistant coach, as a coordinator. There's enough football people in the world that are smarter than me that know Tommy Rees's value and what he could be. Right now, Tommy Rees is working through some quarterback struggles. There are times where receivers are open, they're not even thrown to. There are times that receivers are open and they, quite frankly, just don't make the play. The quarterback doesn't make the right read, whatever. Tommy Rees is going to be a good assistant coach. We got to be patient with him, in my opinion. 9-3 or 8-4 this year. I don't know. I don't want to talk about that right now. Somebody says, thanks for the comment, Falcon ERX. Boston College will beat the Fighting Irish. Anybody's guess at this point, to be honest. Notre Dame could be playing championship level football at the end of this year, for all I know, and it wouldn't surprise me. Do I want Urban Meyer? No. No, I do not want Urban Meyer. Hire Urban Meyer at this point. Freeman is not the answer. Couldn't disagree more. I'm gonna lots of talk about Brian Kelly here. Got a comment. I gotta assume then that this is Mark. Amen to that, Ben. I say that all the time. I don't know if they were looking ahead. Too many people make too many assumptions about what is going through people's minds. Yep. That was in reference, I'm sure, to the not being ready to play part. Oof. Catching up on a couple of comments here. Want to make a couple comments about Drew Pine and then maybe do something fun here at the end. So, I'm surprised nobody else had brought up Tobias Merriweather here. Like I say, I was in the stadium all night last night, so I didn't tweet the game like I normally do. But if you could have heard me saying to everybody around me, Tobias Merriweather has one-on-one. Tobias Merriweather has one-on-one. Tobias Merriweather has one-on-one. Stop me if you've heard this before. Tobias Merriweather has one-on-one. And it was all first half. They were covered him with one guy. And I'm saying, my gosh, just let him run a route, go max protect and let him run a route and throw him the ball. And what did they do the one time? Did pretty much that. Threw him the ball in one-on-one coverage. He scored a touchdown. He was open for another touchdown. Pass was overthrown / he wasn't looking for it, which, they just weren't on the same page here. I don't know whether to put that one on Tobias Merriweather or Drew Pine, but he was open once and then was open again. Oh, man. Here's a comment that I agree with. That is a counterpoint to a point that I made earlier. Tommy made that QB room. QBs are all on him. Recruiting and development. Stop giving Tommy excuses. Okay, listen. There's a lot of good points. There's a lot of credence to that point, I guess is what I'll say. Tommy had a big-time hand in who Notre Dame recruited, okay, at quarterback. Brian Kelly probably had more, to be honest with you. Brian Kelly was the quarterback guru. Brian Kelly was the guy that was supposed to be the offensive mind that would tutor Tommy Rees, that would help Tommy Rees develop these quarterbacks, and it didn't happen. Tommy Rees is now that guy, right? Okay, but all I've seen Tommy Rees do is go out and land C.J. Carr, who allegedly is one of the best quarterbacks in his class. So, you say that, and yes, does a lot of the quarterbacking difficulties fall on Tommy Rees because he was the quarterback's coach? He's the guy that recruited these guys. Yes, Tommy Rees was a first-year big-time football coach under Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly is gone now. Tommy Rees now has to figure out how to do it on his own, and maybe that's good for Tommy Rees. That's my point. Drew Pine needs to get in a rhythm to be successful at QB. Slowing the offense down is detrimental to that. I kind of agree. I think Drew Pine's good for what Drew Pine is, and that's a backup, a guy that's going to distribute it, a 1 or 2 read quarterback, unfortunately, and he's shown why he was not the starter. Estime's fumble was the backbreaker. We were going down to score, no question about it. Obviously, I think we were in field goal range at the very least, right? 16-14 in field goal range. You fumble. That took the wind out of the sails a whole awful lot. All right, here's what I'll do. I want to talk real quickly about. I kind of saved this point for after going through the comments, so I appreciate all of those comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We've had a pretty good turnout tonight. Here's what I'll say about this Drew Pine situation. First of all, Notre Dame is they're now 3-3 on the season. I feel pretty confident that Notre Dame is going to find a way to get 3 or 4 more wins at the very least. Get to be bowl eligible. Get that extra week or 2 of practice as you lead up to a bowl game, and that what is going to happen here at the end of the season is going to be positive for Notre Dame. I really feel that way. I've said on different shows that, Notre Dame, this is going to sound contradictory when I make these 2 points, but on one hand, Notre Dame is going to take their lumps this year, focus on how much better this team gets after losses like Marshall and now Stanford, and see how much better they are from those losses to where we are at the end of the season. Because at this point, you're at the halfway point of the season. Okay, you can kind of draw a line in the sand now. Went 3-3 in the first half of the season. What are we going to do? How have we learned? What changes are we going to make? How are we going to grow the rest of this season so that 2023, 2024, you're ramping up for a peak, because that's what Notre Dame does. You develop, you put things in place, you try to hit it out of the park once every 3 or 4 years. That's what you want. And then you hope then that when you do that and you do that consistently, then you start to, develop a little bit of depth. You start to, fill in on some of these spots so that you don't have talent gaps. And now you're looking at more of a machine than what you've got. Okay. To me, Drew Pine, he's shown you what he is at this point. He's a guy that can get hot, a guy that, in a backup role, if your top guy goes down, he can be a very formidable guy that can, that can manage a game, get hot, put up some good numbers. He's got decent arm talent. He's just not the all-around guy that you want. He's not the game changer, the playmaker, the backyard football guy when you need him to be a backyard football guy, the guy that's going to make plays on the run. I don't know that Steve Angeli is that guy, but I wouldn't mind finding out at some point. I wouldn't mind, and that doesn't mean it has to be a wholesale switch at this point. If you don't care to, if Steve Angeli isn't ready to come on and run the whole playbook from the beginning of the first quarter to the end of the fourth, I understand that, to be honest. But at this point, I don't know what you have to lose. I think there was a reason Drew Pine was named the backup to start the year. And you're seeing that today. You're seeing that in the present play out. And, I don't know. And to me, the thought is, in that particular game against a bad opponent, let me bring up Drew Pine's stats here. You're 13 of 27 for 151 yards and 1 touchdown and a QBR of just over 30 isn't good enough. You take away a big play to Tobias Merriweather, and those stats are just real bad. I don't know. Drew Pine, to me, looks like a guy that's a smart IQ football player in terms of, I got to get the ball to my best player. That's Michael Mayer. So he's, 1A, 1B, 1C. Now it's too late. Now I'm trying to get to my second read. I don't even know where the second read is right now because I've stared down Michael Mayer for too long. And now the play's over. He completed 13 passes last night. Drew Pine did. Michael Mayer caught 5 of them. No other player caught more than 2. Styles caught a little dump off. Lindsay, a slant. Merriweather, the long one. Estime caught 1. Jaden Thomas caught 1. Logan Diggs caught 1. You get my point. Not spreading the ball around. And that's what you want Drew Pine to do, is to be the guy that spreads the ball around. He's not doing it. Would I like to see Steve Angeli at some point, whether it's, the third drive of the game against UNLV here in a week? Yes, I would. I think you've got to do that at this point, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I don't want to sit here and dog on Drew Pine. I really, really don't. Because, there's a lot of good redeeming qualities about Drew Pine. Is he the guy that should be the quarterback for a team that should be competing for the college football playoff every year? I don't think he's that guy. I just don't. And I don't know. That's what I will say about Drew Pine, and I'll just kind of leave it there. Okay. I'm looking at a couple of comments here. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead here and just for a minute, I'm going to throw up the call-in line. Okay. So if you've been watching this, you want to have your voice heard, you want to talk about something, feel free. The number is 330-333-2042. If you're watching this live, obviously on YouTube right now, that's up on your screen. Again, that's 330-333-2042. Keep in mind, I do not have somebody screening calls. I am a one-man show. the producer here, the host, the producer, the whole gamut of this situation. So, if you call in, keep it classy, keep it calm, okay, and understand that if you're trying to call in while somebody else is talking, I can't answer your call at that point, okay. So if you got anything you want to say here, now's your time. If not, I'm going to kind of wrap up my point here, and already I've got a call, so let's go ahead and answer this one from Fresno, California. Hi, you're on with the voice of college football and Ben Belden. Who am I speaking with?
Luis from Fresno.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Oh, I'm as good as I can be right now. I've got obviously yesterday hurt quite a bit, and I've got the Guardians playing the Yankees on in the background, which I've a couple of times gotten distracted with as I've recorded this show. But I'm all right. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty upset, very disappointed. Lost of words, to be honest with you. I just don't understand is we're all getting on Marcus Freeman and stuff like that. This is his first year. He still has a lot to learn. But at the same time, he bought a house out. The couch was already there. He had no choice with that couch. So it's time to remove that couch and let him choose the furniture that he wants to build in that house. And I'm sorry, Tommy Rees has been there for over 5 years, and these are his quarterbacks. And in the 5 years, he has not developed one quarterback. He knew what we were going into. He should have got a transfer, which they did it. Okay, move on. But it's time to move on from Tommy Rees. I'm sorry. He got to go.
What do you say to, I don't know if you heard me make this point. What do you say then to the people that would say, if you move on from Tommy Rees, do guys like CJ Carr and all of that, do they move on with him? Do they move on just because the guy that recruited them isn't there? I mean, are you at all worried about that?
No, I'm not, because CJ Carr chose Notre Dame for Notre Dame. If you know CJ Carr and you follow CJ Carr, he loves Marcus Freeman. All these recruits that are coming, it ain't because of Tommy Rees. It's because of Marcus Freeman and what Notre Dame has to offer. If we get that wide receivers coach that Marcus Freeman wants, hardline, whatever, from Ohio State, oh, you best believe we're gonna amp up our receiving core, and we're gonna get the quarterback that we need. So I think there's options out there to replace to Tommy Rees, and everybody sees that Brian Kelly helped out Tommy too much, a little bit too much, that enabled him, and now when his back is against the fence, he doesn't know how to defend himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a point. I don't necessarily disagree with your point. Let me make that clear. I play devil's advocate, but I don't know. I would say, just to counter your point, like I say, I don't necessarily disagree. I haven't thought it all the way through, but I would say that Reese's, this is offensive side of the football. The best talent is coming into Notre Dame. And like I say, I think you do have a point that those guys are coming for Marcus Freeman more than they're coming for Tommy Rees. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, we could debate that all day. I don't know. But I don't know. I almost want to see, just to counter your point, what Tommy Rees does with these guys that are the best offensive players, I think, that are coming to Notre Dame since Tommy Rees has been there, in my opinion. So I don't know what the answer is. Here's what I will say as I kind of just wrap this point then, is that I like Marcus Freeman to be the guy that's going to make the tough decision if the tough decision needs made. I think if Marcus Freeman, who knows more than you and I, decides that that's what has to happen, he's not going to be Mr. Nice Guy and just, hey, I like Tommy. Tommy's a good guy. I'm going to keep him around. If he feels like Tommy Rees genuinely is not doing his job, I think Freeman will be the guy to make a change. That much, at least, I feel pretty confident about.
I agree with you, but one of the biggest things, if you see Marcus Freeman's press conference, he's been saying it since spring break football. He wanted to be a power running football team. Why are you finessing when we don't even have the players to finesse with? We don't have the quarterback to go empty field? Why are you running a jet sweep on 4th and 2nd instead of pounding the ball? I'm okay if we don't make it, but at least that's our identity.
Right.
Why change it? That's beyond me. That's football 101. And it's mind-boggling. Like, why would you do that? And then Tobias, I've been saying that for the longest. He was open twice.
Yep.
He got one of them. But then after that, he's gone? Bruh, come on. This is football 101. Pound the ball. I don't care if we don't gain nothing in the first quarter. By second, third quarter, we're going to wear them down and we're going to run it down their throat. So that's all I got to say. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I love Notre Dame. I believe in Marcus Freeman. I believe in the staff. I know good times are coming our way. We just got to be patient, but we also got to weave out the ones that don't need to be there. And let's call it how it is. Keep it at 100. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Luis. Thanks. Okay. Really good call there from Luis. He's a multiple-time caller at this point. So thanks, Luis, for your insight there. Again, to react to that a little bit, I don't necessarily disagree. Again, I'm always, not that I coach at a super high level, but I do coach high school sports, and I'm a head coach for a basketball team. I don't know. So from my coaching lens, always says be careful about about wishing coaches gone, I guess. I'm never going to sit here and be the guy, this guy needs fired. Again, like I said, if it comes down to Marcus Freeman being the guy that at the end of the day looks at it and says, hey, a change needs to be made, I'm confident Marcus Freeman makes that change. I don't think that Marcus Freeman, one of the knocks, one of the criticisms of Brian Kelly always was that he hired his friends and he kept his friends around. Brian Pullian, who might be the worst special teams guy in the world. So that was the knock on Brian Kelly. I don't think Reese is going to be that guy. I really don't. I don't think Freeman is going to be that guy with Reese, I guess is what I meant to say. So if a change needs to be made, I think a change will be made. David Solomon here. I like this. I'm going to put this up on the screen. He says, good points. Both the offense and the defensive coordinators are trying to do things with their personnel that they aren't capable of accomplishing. I don't know. I think that there's a little bit of truth to that, a little bit. I also think that Tommy Reese, especially, thought Tyler Buckner was going to be his quarterback for the whole season and designed an offense for Tyler Buckner that now Drew Pine has to run. I think that there's a lot of truth to that as well. Here's another comment. I didn't talk about this. And again, if there are other callers out there, I'm going to hang around here for another couple minutes or so. So feel free, hit that call in line, 330-333-2042. Derek says, bro, we ran a jet sweep with our slowest wide receiver on 4th down. Unpopular opinion here. Unpopular, I know. I didn't hate that play call. I really didn't. You watch football on Saturdays or Sundays, there's a lot of teams that are going to that jet sweep and in short yardage situations, especially because it's just a play that catches the other team off guard. So I don't hate the play call as much as I hate the fact that it looked like the player in Jaden Thomas who was running the football didn't look like he was comfortable running the football and had a cutback early on in that run that could have got him the first down. To me, it's like, why are you not handing that to Lorenzo Styles? Or why are you not why are you not putting Chris Tyree in a slot more often and then letting him, you certainly can't just run a jet sweep every time Chris Tyree goes to the slot. I get that. And so if that was the first time Chris Tyree was ever in the slot on that particular play, then that probably would be a major tip to Stanford. We'd criticize that. But why doesn't Chris Tyree come on the field, motion out of the backfield real quick? You come out and maybe like a a 2 running back type of a set. He motions out of the backfield and then runs the motion back for a jet sweep. That would be something I would do. Those are the questions I have. I don't know. I think, the play was executed poorly, and then if it wasn't executed poorly, it could have worked out. I mean, if he gets it on that, is anybody sitting here on this show or any Notre Dame show anywhere and saying that that's a dumb call? Probably not. You don't even remember it happens. So, I mean, we also have to understand that at times we are going to harp on these things because it didn't work, not because it was a bad play design, but because it was executed poorly. And that's been kind of some of my point throughout the show today. So I don't know. Here's the point again that I'll leave with, as it sort of seems like we're out of callers today. So we'll kind of wrap it with this, unless somebody calls in about the next 30 seconds. This Notre Dame season is going to continue to be about growth. Okay. It's going to be about growth for its players. It's going to be about growth for its, it's going to be about growth for its coaches. Okay. Head coach, offensive coordinator, whatever. There's a fine line here. We're talking a lot about being patient. We're talking about a lot about, all of that type of stuff. Okay. I agree that teams, that fans need to be patient with this particular team, with this program, with Marcus Freeman, with all of that. I can also agree that there's no way that even a team that is going through the growing pains that Notre Dame is going through should have lost that game on Saturday night. They shouldn't. Okay. Winning and losing matters. It's a measure of how much and how often you're doing the things necessary to win. Marcus Freeman makes that point very beautifully, that don't worry so much about winning and losing in the product. Do what's necessary. Concentrate on what's necessary to make that product good. Well, that's true. But winning and losing matters because it's a measure of how often you're doing those things. Notre Dame isn't doing the things to win often enough. And what I need to see from Notre Dame moving forward is making winning plays. Listen, if we go out and we watch Notre Dame lose a 35-28 game against Clemson later this season, after a game of relatively mistake-free football, but Clemson just has better athletes and better players and has been there before, fine. Okay. What I can't see is fumbles, dropped snaps. Okay. That was another thing. I didn't go back and rewatch the play, but I believe it was the last play of the third quarter. Notre Dame was trying to go long with both Merriweather and Lindsay, and Drew Pine dropped the snap. Now, whether it was a bad snap or Drew Pine just dropped it, I'm not sure. Again, I'd have to go back and look. But to Notre Dame's credit, went long on the first play of the fourth quarter. Merriweather touchdown. There we go. Be patient with Notre Dame. Okay. There's a lot to digest here. We've gone for an hour and 3 minutes. If you've stuck with us the whole time, or you join in really at any time, or you come back later, really appreciate you and your comments. Thanks to Luis for calling in. Like I say, he's a guy that's called here a couple of times, so I appreciate him for that. Till next time, go Irish.